So, Machine for Pigs. Machine for Pigs is a flawed game. Let's be completely real here. Everybody is ranking it at number 4 of all the Amnesia games. People are putting Penumbra above this one. There's lack of inventory system, the enemies are not that scary, the atmosphere is actually not that scary at all, the lantern is infinite, and there's a lack of interactable props, which have physics, mind you. Despite all those facts, Machine for Pigs is still talked about to this day. People are still making videos about Machine for Pigs to this day. Including this one, which I've been putting off because I don't have a script and I'm doing this without a script, so there might be a lot of cut takes, and those videos usually talk about the things that I'm currently talking about. You know, the flaws, the story, they go over the story, and that's pretty much it. And while I think that's fine, you know, it's not bad, it's good content, you know, nobody, in my opinion, is asking the real question. Everybody is only talking about its flaws and how, you know, it's not a good game. Nobody is asking, what if it could be different? What if it could reach the potential it has? Nobody is thinking how to fix it. I haven't seen a singular video, mind you, so that's why I'm thinking that. So, without further ado, I would like to talk about how I would remake Amnesia, Machine for Pigs. The only thing that I wrote down actually for this video is these points that I would like to talk about. We'll go over each category, and let's begin with the story. The story of Machine for Pigs is... you know, I kinda like it. It goes pretty much like this. Mandus wake up. Find no boys in mansion. Mansion empty? Mandus explore house. Get contacted by engineer. Engineer secretly orb. Shush, this for later. Mandus escape mansion. Mandus traverses whole factory defending himself from pigs. Mandus turn on machine in hopes of finding boys. Boys dead. Mandus sad. Mandus decide to turn off machine. Mandus goes London. London shambles. Mandus goes through factory one more time. Mandus fight Tesla. Mandus turn off machine. Mandus sacrifices himself. And that's that. So yeah, it's you know, it's not bad. I like it. There's some depth to it. Like Mandus having amnesia, therefore he doesn't know that he killed his boys. Experimenting on multiple people by pretty much ripping their teeth out. Building the huge machines that process pretty much human beings. You know, all that normal butcher stuff. And the metaphor behind the game, that everybody is a pig and when you're rich you're pretty much a pig. And that I am a pig, and that you're a pig, and the guy that's standing right there is also a pig. We're all the pig. But in all seriousness, the metaphor behind this game, I find it pretty intriguing. It sort of reminds me of the Animal Farm. Pigs. People get rich and they turn into pigs. They pretty much gobble up everything that they want, and you don't see that in a lot of games nowadays. Let's move on to gameplay. And oh boy, does it need a lot of changes. First things first. Inventory system! There needs to be an inventory system. Like in all the rest of Amnesia games, there needs to be an inventory system. It can't be an Amnesia game without an inventory. Alright, cool. Glad we talked about that. Next, the lantern. Why does it need to be infinite? I have no idea. Maybe implementing oil or, I don't know, batteries was too complicated? Because it is not optimized at all. The fog that's supposed to hide everything, it doesn't work. Let me tell you, it doesn't work. I'm not a dev, but let me tell you, I can see when a game is not optimized. So yeah, back to the lantern. There doesn't need to be any crazy changes. Just like put batteries there or something instead of oil, and make it rare so you don't have a lantern on standby 24/7. Come on. Leave the players in the dark for a little bit. You know how bad I shat my pants when I was playing Amnesia for the first time? That was a year ago. And that was an experience when I got stuck in the cellar. In the dark. I consider that fun. That's gameplay right there. The one thing that I actually like about the lantern is that it acts like a radar. Whenever a manpig is near, it starts flashing on and off, signaling that there's a foe nearby. I actually like that feature, combined with the batteries, or, recharge stations. That could be also cool. Like you have a set amount of recharge stations for your lantern in each level, and you have to keep a fine balance of having a light on and not running out of power, while also having your radar. Now, when I was thinking of adding features, I noticed these masks. These pig masks. Mandus is wearing one in the trailer art, whatever this is, and I thought about, what if you could wear it for a few segments to hide from the pigs? Like, imagine you're going through the nest and there are mask dispensers, or like masks hanging from a wall. You pick one up and for a short segment you could walk with the pigs because you have a mask, resulting in them thinking that you are one of them. That could be a neat feature, but I'm kinda worried that if it would be used too much, it would take away from the fear factor of the whole game. Like, you have the mask for majority of the game available to you. That would mean that you could pretty much avoid pretty much all of combat. Not having the mask on you pretty much for majority of the game would be probably the right choice, because you wouldn't have it on you all the time and you just couldn't disguise yourself out of trouble. They would take a lot of fun out of the game itself. I was thinking about QuickTime events, but I probably wouldn't put those in. Like, you get jump scared by a pig and you're supposed to mash this button to escape its grasp. That's a big, big maybe. I was lying in my bed and all of a sudden that idea sprung into my mind and I was like, maybe, I guess. This idea probably has no space to be, or no room to be in an Amnesia game. The next thing, however, I would consider to be pretty revolutionary. Consider this. Imagine playable memories. You know how we don't really get to know the boys all that well. Just through a couple of notes, there's a mentioning of them. Well, how about this? 20 years in the can. Haunted Maricot. What if, during a transition to the next level, say you just exited the basement and you're off to another part of the game, there could be a little mini-game, like a memory of Mandus exploring the ancient ruins in Mexico. And there could be like a fun minigame where you're supposed to play hide and seek with the boys, get to know them better, actually get attached to them, so the reveal of them actually being dead all along is more heartbreaking. That's not funny. I'm not cruel. So yeah, I think that could really put emphasis on how important the boys are to Mandus and make the initial reveal of them being dead all along, that they died by Mandus's hands, more heartbreaking. Because in the current state it is, it's whoa, a surprise. They're dead. Cool. It's not as impactful. I have a feeling that should have been a really big part of the game, like a big reveal. And, it's not as good. Before I go ahead and talk about the last feature that I thought of, I would like to mention some cut content from Machine for Pigs that was supposed to be in the game. I found this while looking for some inspiration what to put in, and there's a lot of cut stuff. There's like both locations, items, and gameplay itself, such as Infection, which was supposed to be sort of like an equivalent of the sanity mechanic in The Dark Descent. I don't know how they thought of implementing the Infection. They describe it as pretty much the sanity mechanic, but how would it look like is my real question here. Would it be like the meat from the Guardian? Like, would Mandus be covered in meat? Would he become the meat man? That's probably not plausible, because the Guardian is not even present in this game. I like the sound of the Infection being implemented instead of the sanity in this game, but would it be like being corrupted by the orb? To be perfectly honest, I'm kinda stumbled on this one. I've been sitting here quiet for the past 5 minutes trying to think of a way how to make the Infection like visually both appealing and unappealing, and the only thing that I thought of pretty much is the meat or being corrupted. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave that for the comments. If this video goes viral and makes me famous, then you can put your ideas in there, I don't know. While Dark Descent has the hardcore mode, Machine for Pigs doesn't. I don't know if Rebirth and Bunker has those. Bunker most definitely has, because that shit looks scary. There was also the sprint meter, which was supposed to emphasize Mandus's age and his level of fitness, but it was removed later to provide a more consistent experience because it was apparently annoying, which, you know, I'm pretty glad we don't have a sprint meter. Imagine running away from the Tesla and all of a sudden you're just whoa, gotta take a breather on this one, man. Whoa, God, dreary. If I were the one to make the game, sprint meter is off the list. Next up are some items that I managed to found in relation to the Infection. Of course, we have the tinder boxes and oil, the classics, but then we have bandage? A bandage? To fix the Infection? An equivalent to laudanum from the Dark Descent. So maybe it was supposed to replace laudanum altogether? Because there's laudanum as well, so maybe laudanum was planned and then they decided that a bandage would be more appealing, because Mandus would probably find out what the hell laudanum does. I don't know what it does, but it sure as hell can't be good, man. And then we have penicillin, which was supposed to decrease infection by 2 whole levels. Alright, now in real time, I'm sorta starting to figure out the Infection. Maybe it was supposed to be like over time? It wasn't like when you get hurt you get a point of infection. Maybe it was after a while you get a point of infection. If that was supposed to be the way that I'm currently thinking of it, I'm not surprised that it was removed, because having pretty much a clock ticking your timely demise, I don't think that's fun. That is pretty stressful to manage, also with a sprint meter, and imagine that during the hardcore mode, like damn. Penicillin does sound actually pretty interesting. It's not lore accurate by any means. If I remember correctly, penicillin was invented in 1924, and the game is set in 1899. But you know, maybe Mandus is a genius of unimaginable heights and amplitudes and whatever. My genius is almost frightening. I think penicillin would be a great addition alongside with the bandages. I don't think there's a need for tinderboxes because there's a lack of torches and candles. Like, come on, we don't need that old technology. Oil is pretty much redundant because the lantern would be electric, so bandages and penicillin would probably make the best sense. Bandage healing you for 1 point and penicillin being able to heal you by 2 or 3 points. Probably having a random chance of that happening. The Infection, I don't want to call it like a thing that would probably make the cut, because I don't know what Mandus would be getting infected by. I bet he's sanitary. He's probably the most sanitary person in all of London. He's a sanitizer. And the sanity mechanic doesn't really make sense, in my opinion. Or maybe, actually, that would probably make sense, because Mandus would be pretty much brainwashed by the orb, you know, building all these crazy machines, turning people into Manpigs, and when he's no longer under the influence of the orb, he would probably be terrified of the things that he's seeing. Like, imagine seeing this in your hallway. Like, what is that? What is that? What was that? Who is that? Man! So maybe the sanity is not that bad after all. And with that, I would like to move on to the last addition that I thought of. Hear me out. Machine for pigs with a gun. Amnesia Bunker has a revolver, and so I thought, why not add a gun? The ammo would be pretty scarce, not as plentiful. It would be mostly used to fend off pigs, because they would be pretty hard to kill. I don't want to make the pistol like an overpowered thing, like you can just shoot your way through the whole game, you know, but just have it as a self-defense tool, fending off the basic enemies and saving up the ammo for the Tesla. Now you might be asking, well, what do you mean for the Tesla? He's at the end of the game. Nuh-uh. The Tesla, in my opinion, is poorly executed. It's a pretty below average boss fight. You have to listen for its footsteps and avoid it. And that's pretty much it. I would like the Tesla to be sort of like the Nemesis. It should be implemented as if it's watching you, inspecting what you're doing, to be always present. Of course scripted, it shouldn't appear in a random hallway where you die like 5 times in a row. No, I'm not talking about that. There should be segments where you are supposed to hide from it. You know, maybe fight it a little bit. And at the very end, before you turn off the machine, you should fight it as a real legit boss fight where you're supposed to kill it. I was thinking maybe damaging the cores on its back and the hand and in its mouth, which probably could be potentially the reason that it's teleporting, so you disable it throughout the whole game, and at the very end you either shoot it dead or you make it fall to the endless depths of hell, which could be really cool in my opinion. You know, sort of like a cherry on top before you finish up the game and get sacrificed by your own will. I would really love to elevate the potential of the Tesla, and I think having it throughout the game to be a constant danger to you in certain segments, that would be really cool. Alright, back to the gun. The revolver in Amnesia Bunker is the French Mass Revolver 1892. And I was thinking, right, it's in Britain, so one of the Webley revolvers probably? And then I was like, nah, Mandus is an engineer, an innovator, a machinist if you will. So giving him a simple revolver, that probably wouldn't fit his style. However, a self-loading semi-automatic pistol? Now that's more like it. The first pistol that came to my mind was the Mauser C96, an elegant, German, very complicated, a pistol that uses a 10-round internal magazine which could be reloaded via stripper clips. That could be pretty easy to implement. Reloading 10 whole rounds and individual ones, one by one. Yeah, that could be cool. But then I first saw an even better idea. The Borchardt C93. Well, yes, it has a removable magazine, which would mean you would have to lug around a whole bunch of magazines that you would have to reload one by one. Yeah, that could be a little more complicated, but damn, could it be fun! A pistol that gave birth to the Luger, a wonderful, elegant, sleek, not very ergonomic. But then, my search ended with a very unique pistol that no game has ever implemented. Meet the Borchardt Luger 1898. A prototype that was supposed to improve upon the features of the Borchardt. 8-round magazine, a smaller toggle lock system. Hell yes, it is unique, never before seen, and I think this is the one. Yeah, you could have the easier mechanics of the Mauser, the wonderful steampunk design of the Borchardt, but then you could have a pistol that you've never seen before. The Borchardt Luger. So yeah, I think that's everything for the gameplay portion. Let's move on to the world building. The environments of Machine for Pigs are actually pretty fun. You have the basement of the church where for the first time you meet a Manpig. There's all these cages where there's actual human beings, which adds a little bit of a mystery. Why would there be humans locked up in cages below a church? Then you traverse a couple more areas where there's this huge machinery, more Manpigs, darkness, and then you find the nest where the pigs live. They feast, they sleep, and they work. You have London, which is in constant bombardment. There's Manpigs everywhere, killing people. You have the dream-like section, where I don't honestly know what's happening. Like, you are remembering something, you're talking to yourself, and there's dead bodies, there's rivers of blood, and there's an elevator. Like, I don't know what this section is supposed to be, but it's pretty neat. Those environments are, in my opinion, very cool. They're liminal, huge, expansive. They don't really make a lot of sense. While the current state is pretty cool, I would love to elevate that. More locations, more almost liminality, more exaggerated machinery, more fun locations, such as you traversing a path with butchered bodies hooked up on a line being transported deeper into the machine for further processing. A harbor, which is part of the factory, importing and exporting processed goods, where you traverse cranes and boats to advance. Alongside the previously cut content, there's also cut locations, such as the boiler room. Apparently it was supposed to be similar to the reactor chamber, but it would be mostly made up of wooden decor, you know, being mostly destroyed or melted away by the heat that it would give off. Maybe there were supposed to be some puzzles to advance into more locations. I'm thinking that this could have been probably in the basement, not the church basement, but the basement where you're supposed to find these cores or batteries or whatever these are. Or maybe it was supposed to be in the Mandus's mansion, which, I don't know, I probably wouldn't want this thing in my home. Next location that I found is the fattening room, which was supposed to be a mess hall or like a dining room chamber in Mandus's mansion. And as you can see, good lord, maybe it was cut because of its lack of need, because you already have sort of a dining hall with the instruments and stuff. So maybe it was cut because of that, because there was already a location that fulfilled its purpose. But I would definitely replace that location with this. This looks horrifying. This is what I would love in the game. Just messed up, completely twisted locations that don't make a lot of sense, that there's like something dark happening. Mandus doesn't remember everything, and then he slowly figures out that he was the one to orchestrate everything. And that would be pretty terrifying, you know? Finding out that you are the one that pretty much butchered humans and then served them on golden platters to people to sacrifice and repeat the process all over again. That'd be pretty terrifying. And that's storytelling. And that's what I would like from these locations. A lot of storytelling. Let's move on to the protagonist himself, Oswald Mandus. Mandus is probably the only protagonist in the whole Amnesia series that we don't know how he looks like. There's various paintings of Justine, there's official art of this woman from Rebirth, I don't know what her name is, I don't know. There's also pictures of Clement, what was his name, from Bunker? I don't know, I need to play those two games. And there's of course the man, the myth, the legend, the handsome Daniel. But we never got any, like, not even concept art for Mandus. There's a lot of art on the internet. Some people depict him as just a regular guy in the same, probably around the same age as Daniel. Other people depict him as Count Dooku, which is pretty funny to me. But I don't feel like he's that old. His voice is like probably 40s, 30s? He is old, but not that old. Like, come on. Christopher Lee wouldn't play him. And I thought that, hey, I can draw, so I made this. Yeah, it's it's Hugh Jackman. I decided to make a sketch of how I think Mandus would look like. I decided to go with the mutton chops and a little bit of a wrinkly face, baggy eyes, and a lot of sharp features. You know, now that I made the bit about Hugh Jackman, he kinda does look like Wolverine. There's also some concept art I made about him finding the orb with the boys, and him holding the pistol, and the pistol itself. I took inspiration from Primal's Lord Darlington. You know, this guy, Chad of a man. Mandus himself would probably be also a boxing champion. So yeah, that's the design for Mandus that I made. No AI involved. You hear me? No stupid AI. His voice acting is good. I think the voice actor for him is actually both engineer and both Mandus. Probably because of budget cuts, because they couldn't find any other voice actor for this game. The guy did it himself for both voices, which, you know, it's fine. I like the performance. I like the energy Mandus gives off. You can hear kind of the betrayal in his voice when he asks where his children are. It gives a little more life to the character. Speaking of characters, let's move on to the Manpigs. The design for the Manpigs is probably the best part about them. Their coding needs more work because, like, look at this. They're not very smart, which, you know, I didn't even expected them to be that smart considering they're pigs. But come on. The wretch is basically the most basic enemy in this game. It wears rags, some bandages, there's some pipes. It's pretty basic, you know? It's fine, you know? It's fine. The engineer is a few steps above. It has these makeshift goggles out of spare scraps. However, with no glasses, so I think it's pretty much blind. It is depicted on its hind legs, unlike the wretch. The engineer also has this weird double hand mutation thing. Like, I don't know what this is, but I guess it's a nice detail. I've already mentioned how the Tesla looks. I would probably keep it mostly the same, but I would add marks from being experimented on, maybe make it a little bigger than the rest. That's for the looks. In terms of features, they all pretty much behave the same. They chase, they swish their hands, and that's it. I would probably make them wield like weapons. Not like full-blown military rifles, like Lee Enfield, shotguns. No, not that. Maybe like pipes, wrenches, maybe knives, you know, bones probably. You know, something simple like melee weapons, so that they show off even the slightest hint of intelligence and give it a little more variety. Their sound design is okay. I would pretty much leave it the same, because what other sounds do you wanna give to a pig? Like, what kind of sound design are you trying to make? I really like the teleporting sounds of the Tesla though. It's like a music to my ears. Speaking of music, why don't we go and check that out? The music of Machine for Pigs is composed by Jessica Curry. First of all, I don't want to compare it to Mikko Tarmia's soundtracks for the other Amnesia games. I think they also composed the Penumbra music. I don't want to compare these two because I think it would be unfair, because both of them have their ups and downs in terms of music. In the Machine for Pigs case, Jessica made a very ambient, almost fantasy-like music, which can be both uplifting and very somber. There's also some decent chase music, where I would describe it almost as more stressful than terrifying. Despite how simple it is very emotional, which I think fits the game very well in its current form. I would rank it pretty high. It's beautiful in its own way, it fits the game very well. But for the remake, I would go for something more bombastic, something grandiose, something like the Sherlock Holmes music. I use it quite a lot in my videos. I used it in both Dark Descent and Machine for Pigs. And I gotta say, I honestly love the vibes that it gives off. Like the violins, the trumpets, there's a couple banjos, accordions, a lot of brass and percussion. The Xperi bass also. It sounds both elegant and like fight heavy. I would describe it almost as raw, like sorta erratic, maybe even earthy, if that makes any sense. It's a lot of broken down, sounds that sound chaotic together. It's a lot of detuned instruments that I would think if they would be even more detuned with some metallic, almost like steampunk sounds of like some factory noises, like sirens and stuff. Of course, there would be room for emotional music, you know? So I would probably go for that. Erratic, chaos sounding OST with elements of like factory noises and sirens and, you know, just a lot of horrifying stuff. And so we have reached the end of the video. I probably should have said this at the beginning. Take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm not here saying that you should do this and somebody should do that, or that I'm going to make a game. I barely know how to code. I'm glad that I can code in a people playground, and that's that. But if this would make me famous and I could quit my current job and have this as the job, I would most definitely work on that, but you know, time is of the essence, so take all of this with a grain of salt. Maybe consider all of this as sort of like an idea put on a chalkboard. Maybe a little guide or like a bunch of ideas that could make the game a little better. Yeah, that probably could be the reason that this whole video exists. So I'm gonna probably cut this short. I have no idea how long this video is gonna be. Like, I just recorded a couple of recordings of me rambling without a script, mind you. I'm pretty amazed that I managed to say all of that without a script, mostly coherently. And yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and if you are watching this until the very end, you are amazing, you're great. I have to thank you all for the 119 subscribers. Like, pretty much 120 people decided to subscribe to me and watch my videos. Like, that's crazy to me, and I'm very grateful to you all. This brings me a lot of joy, and this video was a blast to work on. Like, it was very refreshing to work on this instead of my usual gaming videos. So yeah, once again, hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. And be mindful of the pigs. Oink, oink, oink.